Hello and welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Not just HorsePlayer Happy Hour, but the HorsePlayer Happy Hour final table. We ride one more time. Now is that time. We've got a live stream for you for the next 2 hours. We're going to be covering 8 races. We've got 10 players. We started with 90 in the playoffs. We've got 10 left. One of them will walk out of here with a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. Also, we've got 2 other BCBC seats because our listeners and viewers have come through so well for us today via this $179 qualifier. And listen, there's still time to get involved, and you've still got, 6 minutes to get all your picks in. There's only 8 races. That's almost a race a minute. I think you can do it, or you can play all the 4s, all the 1s, as you please. Horseplayers.com, the place to go, $179. And the best bit, all of the house cut goes to our aftercare charities, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. With me here for the next couple of hours, we have the usual co-host of this program from his own eponymous podcast from NBC. Around here, we just call him TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, look, we finally made it to the end here, Pete. I hope folks have had as much fun as we have throughout the past handful of weeks, however long it's been, the better part of 6-7 months now. Here we are. We're finally at the end. We plotted this out in the winter, and I hope everyone who has participated has enjoyed it as much as we have.
I think those sentiments are perfect. You, as typically, are coming from an undisclosed location in New England. I'm in a little bit of a different location. I bet folks can guess it in one if you take a look there behind me and see that limestone and the trees indicative of only one place on earth. That's the paddock at Keeneland. Coming to you live here right from paddock side, and what a pleasure it is to be here. Been down here for about a week now, was in town for the contest, got to meet and see a lot of listeners, a lot of viewers, a lot of players, and that was a great thrill. Very, very happy to be here. We wanted a special location for this very special edition of HorsePlayer Happy Hour. And another special thing that's going to be happening is I couldn't get all 10. I tried, Matt. I tried. I was in communication with all 10, but we did get 8 interviews with our final tablists, and there's a ringer in there, Matt Vagvolgi, who's obviously familiar to people who follow our act over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com, In the Money Media. But the other 7 that I spoke with, this was what we were envisioning, I think, at least I was, when it came to putting this HorsePlayer Happy Hour Tour together. These are passionate racing fans, don't necessarily have big bankrolls, aren't necessarily able to put up the $10,000 to play in a great event like the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, but they love contest play, they love their racing, they're sharp, they're into it, and they've made it this far. One of them's going to walk away with the BCBC seat. We'll get a chance to meet them throughout the course of this 2-hour program. That'll be a lot of fun as well. But are you surprised at that? I was pretty surprised that of the 8 I spoke with, only 1 had played in the BCBC before.
Well, I think, again, to your point, this was kind of the goal, was to hopefully afford some folks who typically wouldn't have the means or just don't have the desire to put up that kind of capital up front to get involved in a great contest like the BCBC. Something like this, hopefully a little bit of a lower barrier to entry, and it seems like that's exactly how this thing is played out. So I'm encouraged to hear that, and I hope everyone involved also recognizes that this is an opportunity. Hopefully we can do this again next year, and if we do, and you didn't get involved this year, all the more reason to get involved, to see that this is exactly kind of how we had planned it out.
And that's the part that I like, that goes both ways, too. I think it just goes to show how somebody who isn't necessarily used to banging heads against the biggest names in contest play can have themselves drawing live. I mean, do the math. We got 10 seats and a $10,000 prize. So they've gotten themselves a $1,000 prize by playing here. And yeah, I mean, it's not like they didn't put up money. They're putting up 20 a week or up to 60 a week. But I mean, hey, for all the action you get, for the fact that house cut all goes to a great cause in the aftercare charities, it's a fantastic thing for a new player to be able to compete. And hey, advantage players out there, why not? I mean, I don't know. I hate to think that somebody out there would thumb their nose up. Oh, it's only a $20 tournament. Look, you can easily win your way into your 179 event at the weekend, and you're supporting charity, and you have these 2 completely added at 0 cost to players BCBC seats. David Browning already has one of them. Who's going to get the second one? We're going to find out in about 2 hours' time.
It's really just one of those things. It's the perfect time of year. I think also the thing that I've been so happy with the way it's all played out is I think this has also given folks an opportunity to get involved with a different kind of community that maybe they hadn't been involved with prior. We've heard from so many different folks who have never played in tournaments before. This is their first way to get involved, kind of dip a toe into the water. Again, with the $20 week in and week out buy-in, it's not such a an exorbitant number that many people can't afford it, but it also does give you that option, or the potential anyway, of a massive prize on the other end. And you can kind of, work on your game a little bit, see what some of the folks, David Browning, who again was just basically the bee's knees all year, you can see how he went about things, and try to kind of compare and contrast, and hopefully use that to your advantage and improve your overall play going forward. So I think you and we both are very pleased with the way everything has gone. I hope the folks involved with the Breeders' Cup and over at HorsePlayers have been happy. Certainly, it's been all for a good cause, with all the juice, the vig going off to charity for aftercare, which we're all very near and dear to our hearts. We want to make sure that the horses are taken care of when their job on the track has come to an end. And again, if we can help folks get involved in tournament play that maybe they would have been a little bit too, I don't want to say gun shy, but they were just a little nervous, and they didn't even know where to begin, maybe this has been a good opportunity or a good option for them to get involved.
Great starting point, that's for sure. I hear the bugle. That means we're about to get rocking and rolling with our first contest race here at Keeneland. Did you have a chance to look at these races today, Matt? I didn't ask you off air.
I have two entries in the qualifier this afternoon.
Oh, bada boom, bada bang. Well, how did you play it? Who do you like?
So it's a little bit of a speculative play. To be honest, I don't know that I love 7-2, but I just thought Love Struck was interesting enough for Mott. Just a total sort of, I don't want to say renovation, but trying the main track for the first time. Lasix on. I think you've got excuses for each of the past two runs. And not that I don't like Marion Francis or think that this one makes sense. I just wanted to look for a little bit of a better price. So on both tickets, I have the 5 right now.
Oh, makes perfect sense to me. Definitely one where the eye is drawn. That the Lasix edition, certainly eye-catching, and one that could see a race run to suit today. I'm curious to see what kind of a trip do you imagine she's going to get? How do you see the pace shaking out in here?
She's not one that has shown sort of brilliance early on as far as her positioning is concerned. I don't think she'll be pushing the pace. But then again, you take a look at her family. She's got a massive pedigree. She's a half the Scat Daddy. She's a half to a Group 1 or a Group 3 winner, I should say, on dirt for the fillies and mares as well. So, I mean, this shouldn't be an issue. The surface, I guess the question is she good enough, to be honest? Because, we know that the pedigree game doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be as good as your siblings were. She hasn't quite lived up to it just yet, but maybe she just needed dirt all along.
All right, let's see what happens. We've got this one about to go from Keeneland. I'm having a little screen issue here, but trying to get it back. There we go. Yeah, AJ, whenever you get the chance, if you want to cut over to the Keeneland Race 5 stream, I think you know how to make that magic happen. I don't actually see it here in the bottom windows, but AJ, if you need some help, let me know. We'll get it sorted out. And in the meantime, we can always just we can just call you back in. I think he indicated we may be having a little trouble with the stream out there, which is weird because we've never had that happen in all the weeks that we've done that. Leave it to the last week for that to happen. But I think we can it's still ticking along there. I think we should leave it. We'll just keep going as if we're rocking and rolling, Matt, and we'll see what happens, because it could come back on at any second, or maybe it's being recorded and can still be played for the replay, if nothing else. But let's see how you're doing here. So you went double barreled. You went double barreled on the 5, and you said you're not thrilled with this price, but hopefully we're going to have a chance to get some points here in the first race as they pop from the gate here at Keeneland.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a terrible price by any means. Definitely ticked up there at the end. This is going to be a bit of a wider trip, and PTF, it's going to be tough for you because I think you're probably a few seconds ahead of what we have on the stream. So you may actually be hearing Kurt Becker. You're in a bit of the time warp, if you will. But
I can mute, so there's no spoilers.
No. I mean, look, either way, you're down there. You've got the best seat in the house. We'll find out. Again, this is more of a speculative play, but I felt like compared to the two shorties in here, I didn't need to get stuck into them so early on.
Fair enough. Do we expect the 6 to get loose like this? What do we think this one's chances are of hanging around for a piece?
Yeah, I mean, it stretch out speed. The horse ran really well 2 starts back, going 2 turns at Canterbury, albeit against much weaker. From a class standpoint, probably up against it, but crazier things have happened, and you can see that the field is bunching up a little bit as they head into the far turn. My horse would need to be 15 lengths the best with the trip that she's had, as wide as she's been. And it doesn't look like she's really doing much running. Now it's a matter of, selfishly, I want one of the shorties to get in there and get this thing done so I don't get beat up too badly too early on. But they're both going to need to, the one's going to need to find a seam buried down on the inside, and the 4 is going to need to either split horses or rally on the far outside. Looks like we're going to get a split with the 4. Maybe. Tip out. Still got a lot of work to do. And it looks like you're going to... Oh, kicking in at the end. Both of them, the 1 and the 4. I don't think they're going to get there, though. It's going to be very close. It's going to be very close. Oh, got up in time. Saved.
That's good for you, because there's a lot of that's a typical thing in contests, right? When your number isn't going to be the 1, you switch and you start rooting for the heavy favorite. You looked in trouble from a couple furlongs out there, but in the end, the favorite, too tough, just kept finding in the lane and gets up by about a length there at the end.
Especially with the short stretch at Keeneland. You never know when that wire is actually going to come up and bite you. But yeah, to your point, and I think that's something else from a contest standpoint for those who are still relatively newcomers. You know, a part of the reason, not saying you don't want to take a favorite, but in a race like this, if you have 2 shorter prices, look, I understand that those few bucks could come back to bite you in the rear end at the end of the contest if you don't use them. But to me, I look at it and say, I would rather take a shot with a horse that, all told, could have paid win place somewhere in that $15 or $16 range and get a jump start on the field, and hope that if my horse doesn't win, one of the 2 shorties, who are both sub 2 to 1, they get the job done. The damage is limited anyway. And going forward, if I can't make up that money, I wasn't going to win anyway. That's kind of the way I approach it. So this is in a way not the best case scenario. The best case scenario would have been a win, but this is certainly limiting the damage, put it that way.
I think that's a good way of putting it. We got a few minutes till our next contest race at Belmont. We got these 8 interviews, AJ. I think we should go ahead and run one. But maybe before we do, let's very quickly give our thought on the Belmont race in case we run into in case we end up running into the next at Belmont. Who did you end up playing in here, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, if you just handicap the race, nuts and bolts, Flop Shot is as loose gets on the front end for Chad, arguably the best horse already in the race, makes all the sense in the world. But going back to what we just chatted about, 3 to 5 to me, yes, the horse is good, but if the 3 to 5 shot wins, so be it. It's a bit of a defensive play for me. I've always been a fan of Farmington Road. I liked the horse even when they were flirting with the Kentucky Derby Trail. I think there is some talent here. And I thought, all things considered, the first start back in the middle of September, a few weeks back, that was the first start since November of last year. I didn't think it was an offensive performance. I expect a forward move. Took some nibbles early on, continues to float up, maybe pace compromised, but on both tickets, I have the 8 Farmington Road.
All right, good. Godspeed there. I was master of the obvious. I was boring. I couldn't get off a Flop Shot in this spot. The pace angle you mentioned, the move into the hot pace 2 back, the flow upgrade coming out of the last one. Yeah, obviously 3 to 5, not going to help you much in an 8 race contest. You are supposed to reach for a bigger price, but when I went ahead and handicapped this race, this was my pick. So let's go ahead and roll one of those interviews, AJ, if we can, and we'll rock and roll from there. The first of our final table guests for this HorsePlayer Happy Hour, John Kilpatrick. John, I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting. Where are you from? What do you do for a living?
So I'm from Massachusetts, Canton area. I do some law work, and I go out meetings the game when I was in my 20s. He's been doing it for 60-something years. He's like in his 80s, and that's how I learned, to start out. So it's been nice.
Divorce mediation, huh? Has playing the horses ever come up in some of those more contentious negotiations, I wonder?
Not really, That's why horse racing is a good break from that, you know what I mean?
No, it makes sense. So how long have you been at it for?
So I've been playing, I started in the 20s. I wasn't, I didn't get really involved until about my late 30s. I started doing a lot of, online betting, with exotics, pick 3s, 4s, 5s, things like that. I didn't start to get into tournament play. Probably started last year and really started to take it seriously. So now I play about 80% as tournament play, and maybe half of that are feeders. The other ones are like money games. And then, the other 20% is what I normally would do before.
How old are you now?
I'm 48.
Okay, so you're pretty late bloomer to get into racing, and you mentioned you did have the classic sort of trope of an older relative who showed you something about it. But what made you take it more seriously, and then where did you discover tournaments essentially?
So I started taking it really seriously probably, I want to probably say 6, 7 years ago. And then how I got into the tournaments is that, I started, fooling around with Horseplayers and Horse Charities, the two kind of the sites that are, normally would get on. And I decided to give it a chance and say, all right, I'm going to focus more on just tournaments and try to make money that way. And it's a different ball game than playing regularly.
What do you like about them?
But,
what do you like about the tournament side of things?
oh, I love the tournaments. It's just great because you get a chance to, you win some money. You get lucky. You get a nice, price horse in there, can move you up the leaderboard, and and I enjoy tournament play. I mean, I was an athlete growing up, and so I enjoy the competition of it, and just to see, and just to try to, be among the greater players that have qualified for, BCBCs and NHCs. That's kind of my goal.
Seeing your name on the leaderboard against those names that we know from the tournament world, especially the longer you're in it, the more you realize there's not a lot of I mean, there is plenty of randomness. It's still horse racing, but the fact that you see so many of the same names doing well in these events, and when you get to beat them day in, day out, that's an added value for sure in the tournament space. Have you played in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge before?
I have not.
Okay, so is this?
Yeah, so my goal is always to try to get into a BCBC or get into an NHC. Be able to travel and out to the sites and meet people personally. It's hard when you're doing it online. You don't get to see them face to face, and you just see names that pop up. And so to be among some of those great players that's definitely a goal.
That's super cool. And I have to say, given your timing for getting into tournaments with everything going on in the world, you haven't gotten to really experience, I'm guessing, what it's like at some of those bigger in-person events. And I always say there's lifelong friendships made in that tournament room and
right.
Alliances and other things. So it sounds like you have, you're going to have that to look forward to. Have you played in an NHC yet?
So I've done a bunch of feeders. I've qualified for some, for a feeder into a tournament that can get you a seat. I haven't finished in a position to vault. So I always play probably every weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm into some sort of NHC tournament feeder or something like that. So,
well, I would definitely say you're on the right track with the BCBC as a goal, and specifically where you are in your horse playing journey. I would definitely recommend trying to get into an NHC. It'll be fun to get a chance to meet you in person in a couple of months' time. One last question for you. What's your favorite racetrack?
Saratoga. I go there every year. I've been, every summer. I mean, outside of the COVID, when COVID hit, but every year I'm up there, usually the month of August, a few weekends that I travel up, and I just absolutely enjoy Saratoga, just the atmosphere, love the trainers, love all the jockeys, and people are just fantastic.
It's a magical place, no doubt about it. John, very glad to get a chance to meet you here, and Godspeed in the tournament today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pete. I really appreciate it.
Cheers,
have a great
buddy.
day. Cheers. Bye.
Good stuff there. I timed that wrong. They're just turned in at Belmont. AJ, if you can throw that up there real quick, we can at least watch the stretch drive flop shot as predicted. Alone in the lead a long way, but facing a serious challenge in the lane here from the three runner. Oh, looks like they're over on. I'm watching on a lagging video on my phone. This one's in the books, and flop shot, despite having that advantage, not enough to hold off the late challenge of the three here. What'd you make of this, Matt?
To be honest, I think it's one of the rare instances where, I don't have any problem with the ride from Luis Saez and Farmington Road, but it felt like I think the other riders recognized that this horse could just be all by himself on the front. They really cranked things up, if you believe the clock, which again, we can go into that another time. But that second quarter, they really cranked it up a little bit, 23 and change. And I think it was just enough to take the starch out of flop shot. And it allowed Value Engineering, who was well behind early on, to rally and get up in the shadow of the wire. So look, a fair price for those of you who had Value Engineering. 5-2 gets the better of the 1-2 shot. It's a Chad Exacta. What else is new? And no real complaints about any of it. Again, I think it's one of those things we can't, and Jonathan has always said it, you can't complain about lack of aggression when you get aggression, or vice versa. You get what I'm saying? Where you can't sit there and say, oh, well, why doesn't anybody go in these races? And then when they finally do, then you complain about it. I have no beef with it. I thought he took a shot and it didn't work, unfortunately.
And doesn't really hurt anybody, honestly. Again, it feels like in these 8 races, we'll see, but it feels like there's going to be a price that you're going to have needed to have, and then the rest of it might end up being window dressing. I mean, that's what I'm sort of feeling in here. I mean, I suppose we can just inch along with chalk and get, for lack of a better contest result in that sense, but we're going to see what happens over the course of these next 6 races. Hopefully, when this goes official, we can get our leaderboard. We can do the double leaderboard for the final table and the qualifiers with the 2 BCBC seats being given away here. We'll have that in just a couple minutes. But right there, Javier Castellano just producing that run at the perfect time, taking down the 1-2 stablemate flop shot. And as you said, Matt, stop me if you've heard this one. Chad Brown runs 1-2 in a turf race.
Shocking result, really. I've never seen it and never heard of it before. Speaking of Chad Brown, we know he's going to have a big charge, at least a couple anyway, in the Breeders' Cup, but specifically the turf. I have to ask you before we go on to anything else, any chatter down there or overall feelings about Mishriff not coming over here?
So that's confirmed. That is now confirmed. Is that right?
That's what has been put out by the Daily Racing Form and a number of reputable places. So it sounds like Mishriff is not coming at all.
Yeah, it's very disappointing. I thought he would have been a factor, obviously, in either race that he might go in, the turf or even in the Classic, based on what the run that he made in Saudi and how ordinary he made those horses look in the lane. Granted, he did it with the setup, but clearly there's something about Mishriff that they don't seem to want to run him on the dirt again. I don't know if he picked up a knock there. I don't know what happened, but it felt like in Dubai they had a chance to run for many millions more and would have been a heavy favorite to do so. But so this news, one thing that pops to mind is that maybe this is about he has that big bonus from winning the International. If he goes on to win the Japan Cup, maybe they've decided they want to do that. Maybe they decided that the 3 hard races in the 8 weeks or whatever it would be too much for him. So it's disappointing, but not surprising. And hopefully this is a horse who we'll still get to see on the racetrack at some point. Unless, was there any indication if he might be done or coming back next year, or did anybody mention Japan? What else was in the reporting?
All it is saying, this is a story from Steve Anderson, is that Mishriff may stay in training in 2022 with the Breeders' Cup Classic on dirt at Keeneland as the long-range goal.
Okay.
But there is no talk. It's basically, Gosden said he's in need of a little bit of rest, so it doesn't sound anyway like he's going to run again this year.
Okay, and that leaves the door open a crack because it is a few more weeks to Japan. But, I mean, hey, as much as it might be a little bit of a bummer for racing fans to not have Mishriff for the Breeders' Cup this year, it's a pretty darn big positive for racing fans that we might get to see him again racing next season. So we'll take the good with the bad as far as that one goes for sure. We'll chat a little bit more about the Breeders' Cup, catch as catch can. Let's go over these leaderboards, and then let's do – I realize that was a bit of a host fail trying to sneak these segments into between the 2 races, but we should have plenty of time for the next at Keeneland, right? So maybe we can we'll do the leaderboards and then maybe 2 of them, because I definitely want to get all 8 of those in. Chance to meet the people who are competing right now. The one who's winning is Matt Vagvolgi, 1770. With getting his points in those first 2 races. And Matt's certainly no stranger to the BCBC, no stranger to contest play. I think an odds maker would have made him the favorite in this field, but in an 8-race contest, that doesn't mean anything. Somebody's just got to pull in one spot, and they'll be right there ahead of him. Others to score so far: Don Marquardt, Greg Lewis, Truls Engebretson, Pete Savage, and Mark Henderson. Savage and Henderson, the 2 we didn't get for the final table. So I'm going to be a little churlish, and since they didn't even email me back, I'm like low key rooting against them and for the 8 who showed up.
Oh, see, that's bad form. That's bad form, Pete.
I'm just teasing. I don't root against anybody. We'll be happy, and we'll get the interview after the fact. Maybe they can even come on at the end of the broadcast if it's one of them. They both have 970 now, so well within hailing distance. Let's take a quick look at the qualifier, AJ, if we can, and then we'll go to our next interview. And yeah, there we go. We'll scroll down there and pop on the thing. And 1770, that's the top score. We've got a 6-way scrum. I'll read those names. Guy McDill, John O'Reilly, Joe Rosen, Dan Kelly, Tom Arndt from HorsePlayer Happy Hour final table. From the other final table, World HorsePlayer Tour final table, Mike Webb, and we see Ryan Flanders up there, tripnotepros.com, and Larry Hausman tied at 1670. So how many do we get in the end? Scroll up to the top there, AJ. The other direction. 141. That's just fantastic stuff. We came through in the clutch. I love HorsePlayers sometimes. All right, let's go ahead and meet the next one of our final table players. I'll preamble a little bit so AJ has a chance to note how long this one is so we can do like a proper countdown on this one. And right now we're going to get to that next guest.
Our next final table participant, Greg Lewis. Greg, it's a pleasure to meet you. Tell me, these were the basic questions I would always ask when I was doing these little write-ups for DRF. Tell me how old you are, where you live, and what you do for a living.
58 years old, live in Columbus, Ohio. I retired about 2 years ago.
Oh, fantastic. What was your business before that?
I was in financial services.
Okay, that's interesting. And going from financial services to at least part-time having a passion of playing the horses. Do you see any sort of a connection there? Do you take any sort of an investing mentality when it comes to betting on these beasts running in a circle?
Yes and no. You have a little more of not a loser's mentality, but I know I'm probably not going to make a lifetime score, or it won't be as profitable as my investing.
It's an expectations management exercise, I suppose. But I would imagine it's a little bit more fun too.
Absolutely. Being able to do some traveling, meeting some different people, and just continuous learning, I would kind of put in that bucket.
Tell me where it began for you, horse racing. How long have you been aware of its existence?
Well, it's kind of a two-part answer to the question. The legend has it that my mom I was in 62. My parents were up at the Raidan Jaipur in Saratoga. The legend is my mom was a couple months pregnant with me. Of course, mom had Jaipur and dad had Raidan. But my earliest recollection is probably 7 or 8 years old. My parents went to Sewanaka High School, which is right outside Elmont. So my grandparents lived in Stewart Manor, and we would go down to visit them because my parents moved up to Rochester when I was young. So we would visit them, and we'd go to Belmont, breakfast at Belmont when I was younger, and started going to Saratoga in the early 80s in the summer. My parents bought a place there in 2000 and had it till a couple of years ago. So it was a popular place to visit in August.
And so how many times have you been to Saratoga? Like how many meets have you made it for?
30.
Okay, a pretty good number. Number. We're neck and neck, I think, at this point. What about racing throughout the rest of the year? When you were going to Saratoga in the summer, was it something you would pay attention to?
Yeah, I think not. A little bit in college. Me and my buddies would go to maybe River Downs or and go to once in a while there. Or Turfway had some double headers we hit.
Nice.
So there's interesting stories going on down there. But and just I'd go pretty much. Moving to Columbus, you hit Keeneland once in a while, and we try to make it down the Derby weekend for the last 7 or 8 years. We made it down there and had a good time.
I miss the old River Downs. That was a great facility. Always a fun day out there.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice country track. It's got kind of wooden grandstands and a nice walking ring. And so, it's been a while since I've been down there, but it's, went there a couple times a year in college.
Let's talk tournaments. When did betting in tournaments become part of your betting arsenal?
March of 2018, I started playing some online contests, and then, grinding along, you're making 100 mistakes, not really putting a lot of money into it. I was fortunate to qualify for NHC in December of that year, and I've been fortunate to qualify for every year since.
What was it that made you aware of them? Where did you hear about tournaments?
One of my good friends is Chris Felica.
Oh, fantastic. We love the bear.
So we would talk horses once in a while and say, hey, what's this tournament thing? So he said, try it out, see how it goes. And I've gotten a lot of support, once I've started by various players and spending a lot, some time with me and learning a lot.
Where did you come across Felica? How far back do you
Well,
guys?
it's 2000 maybe, or 2001. Met in Columbus. He was in it for game day, and just it is what it is, and just became lifelong acquaintances. We know of each other, and so we bounce questions off each other.
Yeah, you seem like both companionable fellows. I'm going to go out on a limb and
he knows a little more than I do. So
always a pleasure having him on. We might have to bother him for one of our Breeders' Cup Monster Pods. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'll make sure to bring you up to him. Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Have you played in the event before? What would it mean to you to punch your ticket in today's game?
Well, I mean, I won an entry earlier this year through a feeder, and just getting a second entry would be extraordinary. I've been trying to get the second entry for the whole year. So it's just gonna be, I've never played in one before, and I'll go out there and make a ton of mistakes and hopefully learn from it. And I'm looking forward to going to Del Mar. I've been there once before. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be obviously great racing, and just meet some interesting people and try to learn something from it.
Great stuff, Greg. You definitely seem like someone who understands how mistakes can really be the best teachers. Hopefully you won't make too many out there today. Godspeed, my friend.
Thank you.
Good stuff, and always good to hear Chris Felica's name get a call on the In the Money / Breeders' Cup airwaves.
I was going to say, I mean, and again, to Greg's point, the Bear is about as knowledgeable as it gets, not just in college football, but across any sports landscape, and including the horses. I'll never forget when we did the Sports Center at Belmont for the Triple Crown, the two of us sitting there, and he's like, I've been down this road too many times. There's no way. It can't happen. And sure enough, when it happened, I came back down on set after the race. He was like, I can't believe it. I just never thought it was going to happen. So
it was mind-blowing for those of us, especially who'd been there for so many of the twos of threes, the close calls. All right, they just heralded them out on the track for this race at Keeneland. This time, I think we can sneak in another interview and see the race. Let's try to do that, AJ, if that's possible.
Next up, we've got another one of our final tablists joining us here on HorsePlayer Happy Hour, Truls Engebretsen, who I'm very pleased to learn off air, whose name I've been pronouncing correctly this entire season, because you've been very active pretty much since when the gates opened for HorsePlayer Happy Hour. How are things, my friend, and how's been your experience with this HorsePlayer Happy Hour Tour?
It's been great. I mean, it's been such a good cause. And, I got into tournament play like during the pandemic last year, and I love what you guys do. And, I think this was a great opportunity to kind of, play around with not a big cost. And, it's been awesome. So I really appreciate it.
I'm so glad to hear it. Yeah, that definitely the idea, and definitely the idea for newer players to be able to hang tough and compete against the names we see on leaderboards all the time. You mentioned getting involved during the pandemic. Where did you learn about the concept of tournament play?
Yeah, so I've been playing the horses for a long time. I own a few horses, and I've been playing for like 18, 20 years. But during the pandemic, I just needed something new to do, right? You needed something new to happen. And I was just sitting at home, and I kind of started, I followed you and your stuff, and I listened to Steve Bick and all that stuff, and just started exploring it. And it's such a great little addition to the kind of the gamblers toolbox, and it just increases the excitement around the big days and whatnot. So I've been in some tournaments. I started kind of small in some of the feeders and whatnot, and I've entered in some of the bigger ones. And I think it's just a great thing, and I'm going to continue to play. And this is awesome because this also goes to a good cause, right? So
you're hitting all the notes. You're hitting all the notes, yeah. And so we're doing these in order. I think we're going to drop them in order during the broadcast. Third person we're talking to, third person who's relatively new to tournaments. So I love that. I love that idea. You mentioned about horse ownership. Tell me about that a little bit. Where do you have your runners? What are the circumstances behind that?
Sure. Yeah. So I run under, it's called Dublin Fjord Stables. Don't ask me why. It's a long story. But we have horses at Belmont for the most part. We use David Duggan as our trainer.
Great guy.
Yeah. And then we've used Derek Ryan for some of the turf runners that we need to send down to Florida, down to Tampa and stuff. It's low level stuff. It's nothing too crazy. But right now I think it's me and a couple partners, and we have like 5 horses in training. We actually got into breeding So we're exploring that stuff, and it's just a fun way to kind of get more involved in the game. But certainly on an amateur level, it's not it's nothing too crazy.
Most of it is when in the true sense of amateur, doing something for the love. That's why most people do things like own horses and bet on them. What would it mean to you to win this Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat? Sounds like it would be your first big tournament from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, totally. It would be awesome. I mean, I've not really even come close to qualifying for the BCBC, so I would love it. That'd be just an amazing experience, and it's obviously, I think it's probably the big, except for the NHC, I guess it's the biggest tournament out there, right? So it would just be an awesome experience, and I have no doubts that I will be. I'm a full-on amateur, and I'm way behind some of these other guys, but I'm learning slowly and picking it up, and it would just be a great thing to happen.
Give me your basic statistics. I don't want to start every interview the same way, asking age, where you live, and profession, but we'll loop around to that now with you. Give me those stats.
So I'm 43 years old. I was born in Oslo, Norway, and I moved over here for college. I played soccer, and then I married an American girl and stayed here ever since. I actually lived in Park Slope for a long time.
Really?
Yeah.
Whereabouts in the Slope were you?
I was on 8th Avenue and Union Street, right by Grand Army Plaza.
Dude, that is, I could throw a rock from the bunker and hit your old place. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. No, we had 2 kids, and then we kind of decided to, move to the burbs. So I still work in the city. I'm a credit bond trader at Credit Suisse. So I commute in, but right now I'm in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Racing in Norway, that's more of the that's harness racing entirely,
yes.
Or is there flat racing over there? And were you into it at all?
Yeah, my family bred some harness horses, so it's mostly harness. Harness is a big sport over there. There is a flat track in Oslo that we go to, but I mean it's very low level. It's like the Fawner Park type of stuff. I mean it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to go, and it's not anything close to legitimate racing. Some of the racing in Scandinavia is okay. Like Stockholm has a track, and Copenhagen has a track, but Oslo is a little behind. But the harness stuff is very legit. Yeah,
that's awesome. Which apologies if you answered this already. You're suburbs now, but are you north? Are you west? Are you east? Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut? Where are you?
Sorry, I'm in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
I'm a commuter.
Good stuff. Yeah. Good stuff. It's not Park Slope, but it's okay.
No, I know we miss it. I mean, you can't get a good pizza slice or a bagel up there. You got
to go to New Haven though. You're not that far.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Get the good stuff out there. All right, Truls, thank you so much for your time today. We'll be following with great interest as you progress through this final table.
Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
That was a fun one for sure, getting to know Truls a little bit. And it really was a relief that his name had not been getting butchered all year long. Matt, we're about ready for this next race at Keeneland. Let's talk about it real quick. What did you like in here?
This is the first point in the contest where I split up my tickets, and I'm a little bit disappointed with the price of one of the horses, but I have the 7 Fieldstone on one ticket, and I have the 10. Let's go with Epimythium, somewhere thereabouts, pretty close, right? Didn't butcher it too badly. The logic with the 10, I really liked the effort 2 back at Kentucky Downs. I sound like a broken record, but I truly believe there is a major connection between these 2 tracks, both going from Kentucky Downs to Keeneland or vice versa. So I thought this one was a little bit interesting at what I hoped would be a big price. And in fact, 22-1 is. And then with Fieldstone, the most recent start made a pretty legitimate middle move into what I thought was a fair enough pace and just flattened out a little bit at the end. The blinkers come off. Hawk of War, who's also in this race, came back and earned an 85 in the next start. So I like the form, and I can't help but think that there's a little bit of signal here in this money at 5-1. Little lighter than I would have hoped. I was shooting for that morning line of around 8-1, but at this point, I will take points on either ticket. So I have the 7 and the 10.
7 and 10 for Matt. I was a little disappointed in the price mine is, honestly. I was taking a long look at number 8, who's going off the favorite here. That is Hawk of War, best of those in the common race. I was just thinking was going to get a very good trip in this spot, potentially positioned just off the speed and look to maybe have the finish to go by those leaders. Not a lot of strong. I didn't think there was a ton of strong speed in the race, so I wanted something to maybe make a middle move, and get a jump on them. I landed on number 8, Hawk of War, not a pick that I'm thrilled with at the prices. I feel like, you got to feel at least okay about where you are, Matt, and with what this leaderboard has done so far. Chance to vault yourself right into contention, especially if you can get this cap horse in, number 10.
Yeah, and look, now my pet rider now of Alex Ashard on the 10, who guided In Love to victory in the Keeneland Mile. So I'm forever grateful for Mr. Ashard. And it sounds like, look, it's a great story. Relatively new here in the States. Consulted some of the fellow French jockeys, specifically Florent Giroux, asked him for a little bit of guidance. Flo gave him a couple of ideas. He set up shop in the Midwest, and he is, I go back to that ride on In Love. He looked like Jerry Bailey out there, just cool as a cucumber, bided his time, tipped out, never said, didn't make any kind of a premature move. And I think those are the sort of things, again, it's like any other kind of line of work. You need an opportunity to show what you can do. I'm hopeful that he's going to get some more legitimate top level mounts, because I thought that was just a brilliant ride. And he's going to have to work something out from the 10 hole here if the horse has got any chance, but we'll give him a shot here. 18-1.
You're being more than compensated in terms of price, and that's something we always talk about. There's posts that are better than others, but as long as that's the case, I feel all right about it. I think I will mute myself during the race because I am I'm not wildly ahead, but I am like 2 seconds ahead. So just for to not ruin the enjoyment for anybody else watching live on the stream, after this race, we will get a look at some of the comments. One of the fun things about these shows all year long has been interacting with our commenters, giving shout outs. A little trickier today with all the pre-tapes, but when we get through those, we'll definitely do some interaction with the audience as well. And we can do some of that between the Keeneland and Belmont races, but I'll let you take this one from here, Matt, with anything you want to say or not say, as the case may be.
Yeah, look, this opening quarter, I think, is a little bit on the lively side. You see 23 and a piece up there. You've got greener pastures out on the front. Now we've got a bit of a 3-wide blitz from Uncapped moving up on the outside. Now you got a 3-horse breakaway out there. And I think if you like a horse like the one down on the inside, that's Girl Dad, who took a lot of money early on for George Weaver. If you like the 10 Epimethium, if you like any of these other horses, I think you got to be at least pleased to see they got a little bit racy early on. To be fair, the top two seem to have settled in there pretty comfortably, but we still have a long way to go. And oddly enough, and again, that's why I'm a little bit dubious about the clock at this point, it looked like they really cranked things up a bit there. But in reality, based on the numbers, they would have slowed it down. The 3 is moving very well here in this spot. That's Optimus Cat, one of a few coming out of that common race. I mean, look, 10's in with a chance. I don't know if the horse is good enough or not, but we got a beautiful setup in here. If this horse can kick, just finish for me, 10. Finish. Who's on the outside? The 11 at 4-1 is going to come right over the top, it seems like, that being not a huge number, a 4-1 shot holding off the late finish from the 1. So you got 4-1 over 6-1. That was Risk Manager. Fausto Gutierrez, the horse that already won at Keeneland in the past, comes out of a non-winners of 2 lifetime victory up at Saratoga. Had a wicked pace to run at that day. Came in with a big blitz here, and for those of you who had this one, you're going to get about $10 on the win end. You're probably going to get half that on the play side of things. So probably a $15 or $16 type of horse here to go along for the third race.
Solid run there for sure in the lane. But I'll tell you this, when you're picking horses at prices and you get runs like that, when you're in the hunt at the pace call and even beyond the pace call, you got to feel good about the pick. Even if it doesn't work out. If you're grading yourself on that pick, it's hard to be too negative. You got a chance to pump a fist at least and get a root in at a very big number. I thought you went with a big chance, just sort of emptied out in the lane when you needed to kick, but I'm not sure anybody was beating this 11 on the day. The horse had a perfect trip and well prepared by Fausto Gutierrez, and they'll get the money.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, I have no gripe whatsoever. I thought it was another good ride. I thought Ashard did everything he could possibly do, and like you say, that final eighth of a mile just seemed to really flatten out. But I think that really is. I think folks, I've talked about getting too stuck into the result-oriented mindset. The result of that right there would say the horse flattened out and finished 6th or whatever it was. At the top of the lane, I'm in with a chance at 20-1. I don't know what else you could possibly really ask for with a horse that, based on percentage-wise, the way the public has assessed, is roughly a 5% type. I mean, I would take my chances there every day of the week, and that's why, to your point, okay, if you just get stuck into the result, no, it didn't work. But I think the process that goes along with it and thinking about it probabilistically, I'm very, very pleased with the way that went.
Let's do some shout outs, and we probably don't have quite time for questions yet, but Dr. Shivel is back with some comments. Maybe we'll get to some of those specifics. Magali is in there in the comments. Oh, a whole lot of times. Nathan has a very good open-ended question we'll try to get to later about advice for playing in the first live money tournament. That's a good one. Oh, John Bowl appreciated my T-shirt in the pre-tapes, my little Harvey Pack shout out. He says, may the horse be with you. Good stuff. Yeah, Tano appreciated that as well. Little shout out for the shirt. We have a question from Trish. Trish has been in the comments all year. I'm not sure about Astronaut and the status. We're going to have a lot more about, probable runners and all that stuff. We're going to know so much more when we get those pre-entries next week. Michael Bryant is in the comments. He chimes in. Vashon Welsh in there as well. Looks like that's most of the people. Cindy, we'll say a hello to her. Clinton, we'll say hello to him. And Lenora, also hello to her. Feel free to pop things in here. We got Howard chiming in the comments as well. What do you do between conferences and parent teacher conference day? You watch the happy hour. Good man. Howard will be playing in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Definitely another one of the in the money associated people will be pulling for and watching with great interest out there, along with our buddy Matt Vagvolgi, who when last seen was atop the leaderboard on this final table qualifier. Matt, do you have the Belmont feed in front of you? How many minutes do we have till then?
We have 3 minutes to post.
Perfect.
2 according to the clock. Your 9 to 5 favorite is the horse that I have on both tickets, named Mo Donegal. Now, you may remember Mo Donegal. This is a horse that we had on or debuted on one of our shows a few weeks ago for Todd Pletcher. I bet the horse that day, broke slow from the inside post, rallied very, very late. The only horse making up any ground was green at the end, but finished full of run. Second time out, now we move over to Arad. To no one's surprise, they stretch out in distance. The pedigree suggests this one wants to run all day. You're not getting any kind of a great price, but we talk about the 2-ticket mentality. For me, this was the only other horse that I thought about. And now I'm really kind of kicking myself. I didn't use on one of them because of the money this one's taken is down on the inside. Irish Sea for Shug and Dylan Davis. Second time starter that, or third time starter, second time on dirt. Took money in the career debut, relatively close to a fast pace and folded. I'm expecting a better performance. First time blinkers, stretching out in distance, and the horse is taking, I would say, a legitimate amount of money in here at 5-1. So I'm most afraid of the 1, but I have the 6, the favorite, on both of my tickets here, Mo Donegal.
I was with you on Mo Donegal. I didn't expect the horse to be quite this short, but there might be some signal in that. That's interesting. I was going to ask you if you had it to do over again, the way the contest has gone, if it had been a live event, if you'd have stuck with Mo Donegal. But I think I like your approach where you sort of hedge your bet a little, as it were. You'd want to keep him on 1 to pick up points on a horse that you really like, but maybe on that second ticket, reach for a little bit more of a number. Is that about right to what you'd do if this were a live event?
Yeah, and especially seeing that the 1 continues to tick up a little bit. When I first looked, was in that sort of 4-1 range. Now is up to 6-1 from a 10-1 morning line. But to be fair, also at the same time, recognizing that as I'm going to refresh the leaderboard here real quick, the leaders are only at 26-10. And this may be one of those instances where, yes, you've only got 4 races left after this one, but you got to start somewhere. And yeah, in a perfect world, I'd be able to split right now and have a 6 and a 1. But I do believe the 6 should win. Therefore, I'm going to just hope that we can get the job done, get a few points there toward the good, and then, hopefully that just narrows the gap a little bit for the final 4.
Makes perfect sense to me as they're loading now at Belmont. We'll see if Mo Donegal can build on some of that promise. Looked like one of those runs we've talked about a lot with a first-time starter where they seem to be figuring things out halfway through the race. Again, it was an inadequate distance. The only negative I have is that sometimes when it's a race where the pace is coming back or the pace is fast and they make that late run, it's less about them figuring out the game and more about them passing tired horses. I thought this was a clear case of the former, not the latter, but I will keep that in mind. I won't necessarily be totally forgiving of another subpar run with that in mind. But anyway, we'll see. Hopefully, for your sake, Mo Donegal will get it done, and then we can check out our leaderboards. People came out in full force for this. I'm just so pleased about that. Very easy to be excited when we see Horseplayers supporting a great cause, and we're going to see what happens here. 3 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats on the line. What'd you think about that break from O'Donegal?
I mean, a hair slow. It was better than the debut, but it was still something that can be worked on. Again, gives you maybe an inkling that he's still figuring things out. Frankly, from a purely a betting standpoint, I think he's way over bet at 6-5. But again, with a pick and pray, you don't really have the opportunity to, go through and sniff out what they could be. You could have gone through and looked at the double probables and tried to, kind of assess things that way. But, I think he's still, I wouldn't change places with anybody right now, but I think he's over bet purely from a gambling standpoint.
For sure. And it's hard to see on this video, but he looks to be traveling very well coming up into the race. Oh, he is being asked. I thought he was coming up into the race on his own courage. He is being asked a little bit. So we'll see here if he can find from another mother, face some pressure early, seems to have shaken off the other early pace. Though Life is Great is still hanging in there. Maybe can make a run. Definitely a bit of a bicycle ride on Mo Donegal, but that can work. Sometimes with these young horses, you got to stay busy on them to keep them motivated. What do you think? Is this horse going to cut and run
he's going to
the lane here?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Command Performance, where I think he's the type that he may not be able to get up and win this thing, but I think as it goes longer, he's better off. I don't know if he's going to be able to run down the 7, but he's putting in a really nice late bid.
Be very impressive if he can get there from here. I think it's going to be. I think the leader probably has too much rope, but
no,
he's
I think
he's got close. Big wide strides. Hey, he's going to win by a length and a half or 2. Very impressive.
This is the kind of horse. Now, keep in mind, he's a 2-year-old. He's by Uncle Mo. He's out of a pulpit mare. This is 2 consecutive starts that his best was at the end. This was a significant stretch out from 6.5 to 8.5 here today. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to win the Derby, but he does remind me of Command Performance in the fact that I still think there's some learning going on, and it feels like he does his best when he's on the straight as opposed to the turn. I think there's some promise here. He's still a little green. He's got to figure some stuff out, but I think he can run.
Had to get very busy on him on the turn, but then once he straightened away, like you said, absolutely. I mean, he really flew that last day. That was like, we'll have to see what the clock says, but visually, very, very impressive. It's not easy to make up 5 lengths in a furlong.
Yeah, and if we can keep the visual up here, AJ, right through as they go through, to your point, it's not even this part right here. It's basically the final 16th. It really feels like he starts striding out and extending. Coming up right about now is when he really kicks it in. And it feels like he's doing his best running right now at the absolute end of the run, which, again, bodes well, I think, for if you're thinking about down the road. He could be a 2-turn, mile and an 1/8 should be, he's just getting warmed up at a mile and a 16th here. So doesn't mean that he's going to turn into a superstar, but I think there's at least reason to look at him and think he's probably going to be okay.
Let me ask you this. I thought you did a great job of calling the fact that he had run, given how much he was asked to that point. What did you see that made you were far more confident than I that he was going to finish like that? What did you see on the tape that made you say that? Just for other people who don't watch as much many races as you, maybe to learn something here.
I think especially at a track like Belmont Park, keeping in mind it's all relative. So 2-year-olds, second-time starter, he's still kind of figuring things out. When Irad, yes, he was asking him to go along, but on the far outside, especially when Shug's horse, the 1, came up alongside of him, they effectively were making their runs at the same time. And when that one stopped, it's not as though Mo Donegal was improving, but he wasn't stopping. And knowing the way that he ran in the debut, where he did his best at the end, I kind of felt like it was a matter of get him off the turn, and he's going to be fine. Now, here's another caveat, another thing to think about. I'm suggesting he could be a decent horse. I maintain he does his best running on the straights. The problem is, theoretically, wherever he goes, the turns are going to be even tighter, whether it's Aqueduct, whether it's Gulfstream, whether it's anywhere, because Belmont just has the widest turns that you're ever going to find on a dirt track. So he's going to need to figure that part out. But as we alluded to, he was still a step slow out of the gate. This is after he blew the start in the debut. I still think we're dealing with a green horse that you give him some more time, some more experience. I think he'll be okay. The biggest curiosity for me now is going to be, A, how fast is the race? And B, is it fast enough to go to a race like the Remsen? A 2-turn, mile and an 1/8, December. You're going to be taking on probably some decent horses. You won't be taking on Breeders' Cup Juvenile types, but are you ready for that, or does he need an allowance race to learn some more and put that best foot forward? Frankly, I would probably think you're going to be looking at the Remsen, but that's just purely a guess.
Yeah, I mean, 1 1/8 should be in his wheelhouse. I mean, it surely looks like the longer the better. We'll see what the figures say. We might have to temper the enthusiasm a little bit if this comes back a slow race. But it was interesting, and I wanted to pause on it for a minute just to get some of those thoughts. Let's see. Let's wait. Let's get leaderboards, and then let's get some pre-tapes in the mix. Here we go. HorsePlayer Happy Hour playoffs. Nobody's done nothing since we last spoke, at least not at the top of the leaderboard. Matt Bagvolji's still hanging in there at 1770. Mark, the mysterious Mark Henderson in second at 1390. I'm going to get in lots of digs. Just get used to it. Andrew Uretsky, 1040. Don Marquardt and Greg Lewis at 1010. And Truls, we just heard from 970, along with Peter Savage and CJ Arrigo, who we'll hear from in a little bit. 620, the last two yet to get going. But there is time. We are just halfway through at this point. Let's go ahead and pivot over to the qualifier, see who's doing what over there. Lewis Massery in first place, 30-30. Scotty McKeever, 26-10. George Shute, 26-10. Joe Rosen, 25-40. Ryan Flanders, 24-40. And we'll do a couple more. Earl Pratt, the double-barreled entries with the 6 and the 7, 24-10. And look at Earl Pratt's strategy there, Matt. If you look, only one race difference. He's trying to win 2 seats in this tournament, I guess.
I don't hate the idea. If you really have strong convictions about all these races, but you want to have one separator, I don't have any real beef with that logic. I separated a little bit more. I'm going to go, I'm the same on the next 2 races on both tickets, and then I split in the last 2 races. So, theoretically, I'm hopeful that if I can catch with either of the next 2 races, preferably both of them, I'll really be happy with where I sit going into the final 2, thinking that I'm going to have, you would like to think, live shots on either of them, especially with the way this leaderboard sets up. And I've got a price here at Keeneland that I like. So we'll hope. But I don't have any beef with Earl's strategy. I think it's interesting.
Let's flash forward to your thought at Keeneland for those who are looking to get their bets together. We got 15 minutes to post, so we'll give a quick thought from you on it, just because it sounds like you got something interesting, and we'll hit maybe we'll go runner and hit a couple of pre-tapes.
I have long thought that Flapjack is a better horse than his paper may suggest, and the big logic for me is that he's been running on the wrong surface for a really long time. He's a dirt horse. He's not a turf horse. The first race that really got me intrigued by him go all the way back to March of last year in the Gotham. As a 3-year-old, a 1-turn mile, he put in a very, very large, wide move, and he just flattened out down the lane. That was his first start since September of his 2-year-old year. I thought it was a really promising performance. Then he bombed going 1 1/8 in the slop, draw a line through that. The Matt win, bit of a disaster, draw a line through that. They turn him back to 1 turn, 6 furlongs. He wins by 4, albeit against much weaker. And then all of a sudden he goes to the grass. He tried the dirt 2 starts back when it got washed off, showed some speed, flattened out down the lane. I think that's a little bit sharp for him, 5.5. This 7 furlong distance, I think, is the one that he wants. I think he's a 1-turn miler, 7/8 of a mile. I think this is what he's wanted all along. And all these other horses in this race, I think there's talent, but I have no idea where any of them are right now. Bourbon War, I don't know what his deal is. Hosier, I've never liked. So Union, I think, is a decent horse. Dennis's Moment, we remember what he was as a 2-year-old. He just got hurt. I don't love any of the other one. And Shoplifted, I just don't think he ever got any better from his 2-year-old form. That leaves me Flapjack at a very, very playable 11-1. I have him on both tickets, and I'm going to bet him.
I absolutely love this case. And I think you've got a number of these famous horses. I mean, a horse in Dennis's Moment, for example, odds on in the darn Breeders' Cup Juvenile a couple of years back. They're making the market for you here.
Yep.
And I love everything about that case. I'm following you in when it comes to this Flapjack. Let's get back to those pre-tapes. Let's meet a couple more of our final table contestants. AJ is queuing up the video, and he's going to hit play right now.
Next up in the show, we have a man who got not 1, but 2 entries into the final 10, what we call the whole Kinchin. And just like when Jonathan Kitchen did that at the NHC, only 1 can advance, but we're still thrilled to have at our final table in Breeders' Cup Regalia, no less, Don Marquardt. Don, how are things today?
Very well. How are you, Peter?
Things are good. Things are good. Is my eye correct? Is that a Breeders' Cup shirt from Keeneland last year? Were you at the Breeders' Cup in 15, and were you playing in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge?
Actually, I wasn't there. I had plans to go last year, which is when I brought the sweatshirt, but they canceled things on us, so I wasn't able to attend.
I thought maybe you found some way to get in there. It really was a horseman only, pretty much. I thought maybe if you were playing in the BCBC, they would have let you sneak in. Have you played in the BCBC before?
I have not. As much as I've tried to get in, I haven't won a seat. So I've been at it for several years, but no, I haven't won a seat yet.
We'll go with the basic stats first with you, if you don't mind telling us how old you are, where you live, and what your profession is.
I am 60 years old, and I live in Appleton, Wisconsin, up in Packerland. And my profession is I work with companies. I'm a retirement plan consultant, so I work with companies on their retirement plans.
Are you a Packers fan?
I definitely am a Packers fan. Yes, it's hard to live here and not be one.
Yeah, be careful. If people see you out there wearing the purple and white, they might get a little bit upset if they don't read what it says on the front of the sweatshirt.
That's right.
So where did you first become aware of horse racing?
Oh boy, back in the 1980s, I guess I lived in the Detroit area, and I attended my first racetrack at Detroit Race Course. So that was my first experience with it. I've obviously watched races on TV when I was younger, and then lived up in the Minneapolis area for a while, so I went to Canterbury Park quite a bit. And fortunately for us, but unfortunately for my horse racing career or betting, Appleton doesn't have many tracks nearby. So most of my horse racing experience has been online since probably the mid-90s.
When did tournaments become part of what you were doing in terms of your horse playing?
Probably about 3 or 4 years ago.
How did you discover them, and what attracted you to them?
Actually, my son had started playing some tournaments. He used to play poker online quite a bit, and then morphed to horse racing. And so he kind of introduced me to the tournaments 3 or 4 years ago.
That's what we need more of, people coming from these other gambling spheres and seeing what's cool about horse racing. For him, what do you think it was that made him like the horse racing tournaments as opposed to sticking with poker and other forms of gambling?
I think it was he had an appreciation for horse racing coming in because we used to go when he was younger. Still go with him. So he had an appreciation there already for racing, but I think it was a little more exciting for him than playing the poker online. New mental challenge, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so obviously, you're a fan of the Breeders' Cup, playing in these games and wearing the shirt and whatnot. If I asked you to pick one Breeders' Cup race to be your favorite, what would you say to me?
Boy, I think probably a Breeders' Cup Mile, and especially this year because I'm my racehorse owner, so I've got a piece in Got Stormy, so I'm very much looking forward to that one this year.
That's awesome. And how about a past Breeders' Cup race? If I asked you to identify one particular winner that you identified with, or won money on, or were just a fan of?
Oh boy, good question. I don't know if there's one that stands out. Been to a number of Breeders' Cups, and they've all been great. So yes, I don't know that I have one that stands out.
It's a special event for sure. What's your favorite thing about the Breeders' Cup?
Oh, just the great racing over a course of a couple of days. I think I enjoy that more than anything. And they have them in nice venues. This year it's in Del Mar, which love to go to Del Mar. So, yeah.
A strategy question for you. You had the 2 entries when we got down to 20. And how did you approach putting in that was kind of an outsized advantage having 2 with everybody else only having 1 at that stage. Did it change the way you approached making your picks for the 20 down to 10 game last week?
Yeah, probably a little bit. I mean, I spread my 2 entries, so there were not many, if any, the same horses. With the team being that, and I generally don't play a lot of huge long shots, and I didn't figure it was going to take a high number to qualify. So the strategy was just to kind of do some logical horses on both tickets and throw in one or two there with the price to end up being on.
Yeah, ended up working out in both directions. Well, only one entry today here at the final table, but very curious to see how it gets on. Don, thank you so much for your appearance here on the show. We really appreciate it, and especially your choice of attire. Now go change into something green and yellow.
Thanks, Peter. I will. Have a good day.
Very happy to welcome in next on the show another one of our final table players, and he's costumed correctly, so we like that. And also, I have to say, one of the few people we've ever had on the show who's not a professional TV person, who's framed up exactly perfectly. Background could use a little work, but he looks great. Andrew Uretsky, how are things?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Things are very, very good over here in this crazy location I'm in today, the underground Hong Kong OTB in Lexington, Kentucky. But I want to talk about you, my friend, and let's start with your Twitter handle at DiceHawk. What are you? The horses aren't enough for you? You're also a craps player. What are we talking about?
Well, I do enjoy a little bit of craps. It's not actually based on dice. Well, it's actually based on like Andrew Dice Clay.
Oh, okay.
It's a nickname from, like, I guess I want to say either middle school or early high school, where I would often, like, just like when we were watching TV with my friends, I would like make jokes like at the commercials and stuff. And so my friends called me Dice, and then the hawk is kind of came separately. A friend of mine drew like a hawk with like that has a dice as a body. It's on my Twitter page, but so then it kind of got changed to Dice Hawk, and I've had various nicknames throughout my life. But
I was gonna ask if in another lifetime you had a big pompadour. I wasn't sure.
No.
Let's go to, we're going to lead right with what I'm calling like the basic stats, the back of the baseball card stuff we're getting from everybody at the final table. How old you are, where you live, and what you do for a living.
Well, I'm 41 years old. I live in the DC area, Alexandria, Virginia, and I've been in the DC area about 10 years. I've been a patent attorney for the last 8 years, I want to say, although I left that career earlier this year. I'm currently pursuing other options. Kind of, I'm doing some trading and other and kind of doing some working on some coding, trying to get into some data analysis work. But right now I'm currently not employed.
Do you the data analysis work that you do, does that play in at all to how you approach horse racing?
It does
and how you find your winners?
I'm trying to work it in, although I haven't found a way to work it in too much. I really like what Equinedge is doing. I've used their stuff, and I mean, I really like their interface and what they're trying to do with it. I personally haven't been able to work the data analysis into my handicapping too much, but I'm trying to find an angle.
How long have you been a racing fan?
I've been a racing fan since I was younger, really. I grew up in Kansas City, and my dad would take us, not too often. He wasn't nearly as big a fan. He would take us to the Woodlands, which was they only had horse racing a few years when I was younger. It was often dog tracks, but they had horse racing for a few years, and so I went there a few times, and we would always bet on the long shots and occasionally win once in a blue moon. And
what about tournament play? Also, I want to hear how that came into the picture.
What's that?
I want to hear how tournament play entered the picture too, as you wind up that story.
Well, yeah. So I want to say I didn't really play in any tournaments. That a friend of mine kind of turned me on to the HorsePlayers show. I think it was 2 years. It was 2 years ago, maybe. Do you know the?
Oh gosh, that was much farther back than that.
Was it really?
You could have only watched it that many years ago. But I mean, that was when I started with the forum. That's like 2014, 2015.
Really? Okay.
Mhm.
Well, maybe my memories.
Memory's a funny
'Cause I
thing.
thought maybe I was watching it on one of the streaming services. Or
Yeah,
something.
it's still out there. You could have found it after the fact for sure.
Well, yeah. So a friend of mine actually turned me on to your podcast. He was on your podcast. I don't know, Kevin Kilroy. He was.
Oh, you're a friend of Kevin. Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
All the Fours. Yeah, we remember Kevin very well.
Yeah,
around
the
here.
fourth, right? And I had never heard of your podcast before he was talking about it. I think that was either last year or the year before. And then I started listening to your podcast and kind of listening to your podcast and watching Horseplayers kind of got me into the horse tournament play and I don't play too many tournaments. I do more just kind of an occasional Saturday kind of do some pick fives and stuff more so than tournaments. But I really like I do enjoy tournaments. I'm a poker player. I not grew up, but after law school, I played poker for a couple years, and as a online poker, I've always enjoyed the tournament aspect, and so that's kind of how I got into horse playing tournaments.
I just got to ask you real quick before I let you get out of here about the JK shirt. Did you know him from our airwaves or from the Fox shows or both?
No, your airwaves. I had not heard of him before I started watching your show, and I love what he does, and I love what you guys do, and you've expanded your programming so much lately, and you guys have so much great content, and really appreciate all you guys do.
You're so kind, and it helps to have great partners like our friends at horseplayers.com and the Breeders' Cup, that's for sure. Andrew, we're watching with interest. Good luck out there today.
All right, thank you.
Good stuff. Am I back, Matt? Can you hear me?
You are back. You are back.
Excellent. My mic is acting funny. I think I might have hopped over to the AirPods because I had the temerity of trying to plug in my phone to charge it. It got a little grumpy with me. 1 minute at Keeneland. Yeah, my circumstances today are pretty funny. I have to put out a public service announcement before we get to this race at Keeneland. But before we do that, you still happy with where we are here price-wise with this horse?
Yeah, so I actually went through and priced it all out. I think it's a very, very evenly matched group. I have Flapjack at 9-2, and I'm sure some folks will say that's way, way overzealous, but I don't think there's a great deal separating any of these horses. So this is a massive overlay.
Love it. Let's see if we can get Flapjack in here. I'm following you in as well. Here's my public service announcement. If you know somebody named Brett who lost a pair of AirPods at Keeneland, put Brett in touch with me, because in my haste to get here today, amidst all the work, I forgot my headphones, and I just had the inkling to go to the Lost and Found and see if they could help me out for a couple of hours. And apparently, these fully charged AirPods have been here for at least a couple of meets at this point. I didn't realize they kept their charge. They're sort of saving my bacon right here. So I can do this in a good, I could have gone in a quiet office and it would have been boring. But the reason I'm able to do this from the Keeneland paddock is really because of someone named Brett. So I'd love to get these back to Brett. I'm not an AirPod thief. I'm an AirPod borrower, but I'm not an AirPod thief. So anyway, if Brett, if you're out there, you at Looms Boldly on Twitter, or you can reach me through the contact page in themoneypodcast.com. That goes right to my email. They're off here. We'll do that same gimmick, Matt, where I'll let you talk through this one since we're a bit out of sync.
You got it. The 4 right now is clearing off to the front. That's So Union. There's a little bit of heat on the outside from Shoplifted, and then down on the inside, Dennis's Moment is taking up a position. My horse took a ton of late money, which is annoying, but it's horse racing these days, down to 8-1, loaded into the gate at 14-1. But going into the far turn, they're spread out, but I don't think they're burning out. They're 22-3 for horses of this caliber. This is, I think, a reasonable pace. You would think the old Dennis's Moment from here is in a beautiful position. If he can still run. Looping up on the far outside right now is Hosier for Rudy Brissett. I've never liked the horse. If he wins, he'll do it without me. I still like my position right now. We'll find out if the horse has any kind of finish. Shoplifted is now poked ahead in front. You've got Flapjack coming up on the outside. Dennis's Moment is crying out for some room right now. If he can find a seam, he's going to be dangerous. We turn for home. Shoplifted is kicking on. Flapjack is hanging on his left lead. Change is over. He's in with a chance. I don't think he's kicking, though. That's the problem. Shoplifted continues to find Dennis's Moment is going to try to put in a late bid. It's going to get very close. I think Dennis's Moment is going to try to get up there, and he's going to do it in the shadow of the wire. Dennis's Moment over Shoplifted, third for Flapjack.
Howard was rooting for him. He had a line in the comments hoping he wins. What a strange career. Shame he hadn't progressed from the first few starts as a 2-year-old. We'll see how this one comes back figure-wise. It was certainly a perfect trip and made no mistake. Oh, dear, Matt. I thought once again, just in an absolutely great spot, and I think you called it right. Just was hanging a bit on the wrong lead and wasn't able to switch and go. But once again, no question in my mind, you were on the right horse in terms of, contest play theory, unable to get it done and see it out. Dennis's Moment gets the winner.
Yeah, and I guess if anything, maybe in hindsight, if he could have been a little bit more aggressive early on, but again, that's really splitting hairs. I can't complain too much. He had every opportunity at the top of the lane. He just didn't kick on. And I say that. It's not like he completely stopped. He only, they finished a length ahead of him. So he put in his bid, not quite good enough. Dennis's Moment. You kind of go through and you look at what these horses are. Shoplifted is remarkably consistent. He's a high 80, low 90 type. I think in reality, that's probably what this kind of race will come back as. Dennis's Moment is certainly capable of earning that kind of a fig. You would think, he had earned those 90 plus buyers as a 2-year-old. It's a shame that, his career kind of got derailed by injury because who knows what he could have been. But based on just the way this all played out, and then if you want to use that logic of trying to project, that probably puts Flapjack somewhere in that mid 80 range, which would be a career best, but not totally out of the realm of possibility. So I don't think this is going to be setting any land speed records, but good performance for sort of, good older allowance horses.
We got a few minutes to the next at Belmont. Maybe we'll talk about that, and then we'll answer that live bank question. Folks looking for shout outs, folks with questions, land in the comments. We love to interact with you. We like to see you chatting amongst each other. But let's quickly pivot to this race at Belmont. Who did you use here, Matt? And the rest of the way, do you have the kind of prices that you're going to need to launch yourself into contention here?
So I doubled up here on the entry. I have the 1 Bodie Cream as well as the 1A Mo Ready on both tickets. I think they're both coming out of the best races out of any of these, this entire group. The outside runner is the wild card to me, despite the fact that you've got some other horses taking money. If Doswell is ready to roll, I think he may just be better than everyone. But off such a lengthy layoff, I don't know that I'm really ready to sink my teeth into that. I think Bodie Cream and Mo Ready both have legitimate cases to win. Now, to your point, as far as the rest of the entries are concerned, so in the next race at Keeneland, I have the 5 and the 7. The 5 is Hey Kitten, the 7 is Touch of Class. They're both probably middling prices, nothing crazy, in that 4 or 5 to 1 range. So that's probably not a great deal. The nightcap at Belmont would be my last ditch effort. And I have Pop the Bubbly, who's 12 to 1 on the morning line, and Home for Christmas, who's 10 to 1 on the morning line. So in reality, I would need to win here, I think, to have any chance. And then in all likelihood, there would be enough people ahead of me with either of those two. So probably at best an underneath kind of finish, but you never know until you see what happens.
There will be some breakage too. Who knows? Let's hope you can get some points, get on the board. We'll follow along as we get down to the sharp end of this 8-race tournament. We got 2 separate tournaments going on. Our final table, we'll check that leaderboard after this race at Belmont. And then, of course, we got our qualifier, well-supported qualifier. I was going to give a little shout for a tone in this spot, Matt. I thought could just get a really nice trip, potentially sitting off the speed. As I designed this race in my head, I can see a tone tripping out pretty well for Mike Maker in this spot. Coming out of a race that's produced some decent form. Not a strong opinion, but 6 to 1 seems like a square enough price for a horse who's one of the ones where I feel like the 3 to 2 on the entry is fine, but short enough. And then Doswell on the outside, super logical, but 3 to 1 doesn't exactly get the blood pumping either. You give that one any count?
Yeah, and I think also at the price that you have right now, I think that's arguably the best situation of all of the runners at this point, simply because, to your point, coming out of a race where the horse that he defeated, the second place finisher, was the next out winner with an 89 buyer. So the figs are holding up quite well. I was unsure if not that, and I shouldn't even say that, because in hindsight, I go back and look at it. I was wondering if some of it had to do with the cut in the ground, but then again, This is a horse who's run perfectly fine on firmer going as well. So I think you've got the right recipe of chance and price compared to, let's say, where I am with the entry. I think they're the most likely winner, but I think they're being overbet. And Doswell, I mean, maybe this is unkind, but I look at this and think a little chilly on the board at 3.5 to 1. I would have expected a little bit more money. No.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I was making it sound like the horse was an underlay. I just feel left cold by the whole situation is maybe a better way of putting it with Doswell. What price was he on the morning line, just out of curiosity?
He was 3, I believe. Yeah, he was 2 to 1. 2 to 1 on the morning line.
Yeah, so a little cold there at 3. I mean, I think some of it is the money the entry's taking, though it's starting to converge now. The entry backflashing from 6 to 5 to 7 to 5. Doswell taking that 5 to 2. But I don't like that betting pattern when the horse is, a little what we used to call lobstery, a favorite that's not really getting bet like a favorite, and then they come late. I don't like that betting pattern. I mean, it's not the kiss of death, but it's not something that excites me. I'm happy where I am with my 4 in the spot. I'll be rooting for you to get off the mark here with the 1 entry as well. And then we'll have a look real fast. That live bankroll contest. I mean, the answer is probably it depends as to the specifics of the live bankroll contest we're talking about. But my general advice would be don't just play your minimums. Don't just get ground out by the takeout. Try to find a couple of situations and be willing to risk it all in those situations. Go big or go home. That's my general first thought on how to play a live bankroll contest. Now, it's different. Maybe an event like the BCBC where you qualified and you just want to play within the context of the contest. And I get all that. That's different, but that's not strategy to win. That's strategy to turn money that you qualified for into, the better part of $10,000 or more. In terms of you want to win a live bankroll contest, be willing to risk it all a couple of times.
Yeah, and I kind of think the way that I would go about it, again, you have to know what your thought or your goal is going into it. Are you trying to win? Are you trying to gain some experience? Are you trying to do both? Do you want to walk out with something at the end? I know this is a very unpopular opinion, but I don't think there's anything wrong where if you are someone who's new to it, let's just use the BCBC as the example. Yes, you have to hit your minimums in order to be eligible for any prizes or anything like that, but I don't have a problem with somebody going in saying, I'm walking out of here with at least $2,000 in my pocket or whatever it is. That means you effectively have the balance of your play money, so your $7,500 to play with. And to your point, at that stage, hone in on 1 or 2 spots that you're going to push hard. When I say push hard, out of that money that you've allotted to play with, and recognize that, if it doesn't work, so be it. You're going to walk out with more than you came with. So I don't think you have to just go into it with one mind frame, just regardless of the circumstance. Everyone's situation is unique.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I was just saying from if you were looking for the technical, that's like the technical answer of how to, maximize your expected value. But there's a lot more to the game of horse racing and a lot more to life than expected value as Atone tries to make a run here. We'll see if the bird has flown for your runner. Looks like it has. Looks like we'll have to settle for the saver exacta 1-4 here at Belmont Park. But you you nailed it. It's about what your goals are. And I'm not going to be judgy. I mean, maybe you're somebody who wants to play in the NHC and you come up with a good educated guess of what you need to get that bankroll for in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge to walk away with that NHC seat. You plot a course to get there. You don't have to do it the way that I said. That was just, that's the idea if you're trying to win. I think you really want to try to win. When it comes to the BCBC, especially when you qualify, there's a lot of different ways you can approach it that might make sense for you, even if they're not, even if your dollar isn't, going to be maximized in terms of its theoretical worth. It reminds me of the old, what's the name of that game, Matt? It was a game show and Deal or No Deal, right?
Oh, sure.
So deal, like you look at the way that people play that game, there's a way to play that game where you can figure out precisely, mathematically, what the right amount you're supposed to say deal or no deal is. But then there's your real life and that, what that money is going to mean to you, and you might have to take less than your expected value just to get the chance to walk away with 25 dimes or whatever the number happens to be. Your life circumstances come into play. And that's why for optimal gambling, it's always nice to be able to have it be a completely separate bankroll that you can just treat through the lens of expected value. But it's very, 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 very few of us for whom that's the actual way that life works.
Well, but to your point also, if you're talking about like purely going into a live bank contest and trying to win it, I think we even brought this up maybe even a couple months ago on one of these happy hours, that it feels like the game has changed from a BCBC standpoint, where if you're not willing to not just push, but push substantial amounts of money, you're kind of, you're maybe not necessarily playing to win. Because just go back to last year at Keeneland, what both Marshall and Jonathan did to get to the point that they did. They didn't push 10. They pushed, tens of thousands. You know what I mean? So
80
I think that I think
right
the
over
game
there.
is,
That was right over there.
I think the game has changed in, and I mean, I have no problem admitting this. A fact is a fact. When I had my good run, the totals were much, much smaller. The winning total, I think, was 80 grand or $85,000. I mean, last year that may not have cracked the top 10. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think people have become much, much more aggressive, and you understand why, because that's what it takes in order to win. That doesn't mean that you have to do that if it's outside of your comfort zone. And to your point, we've all got bills, we've got families, we've got this, that, and the other that need to be taken care of. You're right. Purely from a game theory standpoint, maybe it's not the positive EV move, but guess what? If you went home and you said, hey, I had 40 in my pocket, but I took a shot to win, 100, in the grand scheme of things, yes, how many chances are you going to have to win 100 grand? But it's going to be a difficult conversation to have with your significant other that you just dropped 40 grand that could have gone to a lot of different things. So I think it's not as simple as this is what you're supposed to do. There are outstanding circumstances.
And this is the reason why, if you are an EV player, you should be licking your chops to play max entries in this all the time. Because the fact that, however many 100 people qualify who aren't necessarily playing to win are in there, that means that all the takeout, everything is negated. To me, it's just a huge positive expectation. And I'm surprised that there aren't more EV non-horse players who get involved and listen to Matt Bernier's picks, or JK's picks, or PTF's picks, and just play based on random picks using appropriate theory, because it's such a huge EV. If that money isn't money that you need to walk away with, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, if you're someone, and we've talked about this so many times, if you're someone who is a horse player that bets large sums of money and you don't play in the BC, like, what's the point of not playing in the BCBC given the prize pool that's available and afforded to you? If you're going to put 10 grand through the windows Friday and Saturday of the Breeders' Cup, and granted, there are certain wagers you can't play in the BCBC. So if you're purely a pick 5 player or a pick 6 player, you're going to have to keep that money over on this side and then focus on the BCBC. But if you're somebody who likes to hammer win bets, or hammer doubles or exactas or triples or whatever it may be, why wouldn't you go and play in the BCBC given the prize pool that's afforded?
Yeah, it's all about bankroll. Even I would even think that there are professional horse players who are used to betting, let's say you're handling thousands a day, 5,000 a day or whatever. Maybe that's too much. Maybe that takes you out of your comfort zone. I could see that. And if you're doing this all the time and you don't have an opinion in the last race, I could see making a wise guy case as to why you wouldn't want to risk it all there. But in terms of somebody for whom you're betting a lot, but you're not necessarily worried about like having a separate business plan, it's just the best. It's the best thing going. Let's look at these leaderboards, gentlemen, when we get a chance. See who is on top. Matt Vagvolji hanging in there, grinding away, getting a few more points for himself, moving his number up to 2580, but all to play for a lot of these folks in behind. Mark Henderson hanging tough with 22. Andrew Uretsky, we just heard from, 1460. Don Marquardt and Greg Lewis at 1010. Smaller amounts the rest. We got a little break before our next race. I think we should get to another one of these pre-tapes. We've got one coming up. I'm going to take a wild guess that this might be the one with our current leader, Matt Vagvolji, just based on the timestamp on this thing. I'm just imagining I let myself run off a little bit with him because I'm so used to chatting with him about all this kind of stuff. Let's see if we can go to that tape, AJ, right now.
Next up, we have a familiar face to regular listeners / viewers of the In the Money Media Network. It's been a great meeting everybody so far. This guy, though, if you follow our stuff, he doesn't need much introduction. He's Matt Vagvolji. Matt, how are things?
Doing great, Pete. Looking forward to tomorrow, getting after it and see if we get another BCBC slot. So great, happy to be here.
Let's start with the basic questions I've been asking everybody that we haven't done this with you in a while. Your age, where you live, I think I know that one, and your profession for the uninitiated here.
So I'm hanging on in my 30s with dear life, 39, and recently moved to Saratoga Springs, and I will be buried in Saratoga Springs ground. So that's what I'll be forever. So,
what's your official title, like profession or whatever?
I'm a financial consultant for a large insurance company. I work on the asset management side for a large insurance company.
There's definitely some financial stuff running through our final table participants. Tell us about your feelings about HorsePlayer Happy Hour since you got involved. You're somebody who I would describe as kind of an advantage player. We've had a lot of people who are newer to the tournament world. You're the first veteran that we're talking to today. How much of this was to support us and the charities? How much of participating in these games every week was because you thought it was a great opportunity financially speaking?
I think it's a mix of both, to be honest with you. You got to remember where this was born out of, right? I mean, some weird times and not really looking forward to much, and then having this opportunity come in to have a drink and play for a good cause. So I think it's both. I mean, if you look at it just the way it's structured, obviously, if you win the year, you're automatically into what I feel is the best betting contest. Period. That's sports. Anything is the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, but then also too the opportunity to get into a playoff and just kind of play your way through it. So I think it was a great opportunity to get into this contest, but also just to support a great cause. Are these tournaments my forte? No, but I think they're fun. I think it's a great concept that you did, Pete. It was entertaining, and it was born out of very down times. And I'm glad you still kept with it, and always love to support stuff like this.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, and we're very pleased that this random idea we had, because Pete Rotundo, JK, and I were bored one day early in the pandemic, has turned into something that presents an opportunity for horse players with being able to award these Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats, and to do it on such a larger scale, and really be able to find money for Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, who do that critical work of accrediting all of the different aftercare organizations. Let's talk strategy. You already alluded to the fact that you're more of a live bankroll player than you are a mythical player. But I got to figure when you're getting down into a situation like today, where it's 1 in 10 who are getting the prize, that maybe increases your comfort level a little. How are you approaching this thing?
I think it's always important to know the rules, right? Know the context of your contest, right? Mythical tournaments are different. I think that's more of a generalized term. There's all mandatory, there's live, there's a mix like the NHC where there's mandatory and optionals, that sort of thing. So for this, I mean, my basic approach for a mythical contest, I look at it like a basic portfolio construction, right? You've got your low risk, your medium risk, and your high risk. And then you look at how many events that you actually have. So the lesser events you have, I want to dial up my risk, right? Because you're trying to, you're trying to take advantage of some higher prices, because that could be the quick difference, especially in a pick and pray style. But you don't necessarily want to give up on horses that you feel have a big shot to win either. So I would say in this particular final table event, I think the risk dials up a bit, where you're just trying to get to the next week, I'll take horses at 7-5. I mean, if I feel like they can win, if I'm just splitting the difference, meaning getting half the field, that's a different strategy than what's going to go on for tomorrow. So I think the risk is certainly dialed up a bit more when you have a low number of races and a low number of participants involved.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, just think of it in terms of ratios, right? In the previous weeks of the playoffs, 1 of every 2 entries get the prize. That makes sense. That no favorite would be too short, honestly, for me in that, if it was a horse that I loved. Whereas this, where it's 1 in 10, you're still not going to have to go as, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're still not going to have to go as price dependent as a 1 in 65 tournament like the qualifier we have running alongside this one. But it definitely is a different ball game than when it's 1 and 2. If you were playing, I don't know, maybe you even are playing in the qualifier going alongside this today, how would you describe the difference between your approach playing in the 1 in 65 qualifier to the 1 in 10 contest that you're in here at the final table?
Yeah, the 1 in 65 qualifier, I think the risk goes up even more, right? Because you really do have to take shots. I mean, you're gonna have to play horses that you wouldn't necessarily give that much of a look to if you're playing through the windows. The 1 in 10 is unique because, like you said, I don't want to go full out play every horse at 20 to 1 or more. That's not necessary. But remember, it's a winner take all too. Right. So that's also another factor where, like, if I'm playing in an NHC qualifier, you get tour points if you finish in the top 10%. If you're in a position to get in the top 75 on, that aren't qualified, it's just different. So I think your strategy will change. But I think the fact that it's a winner take all and the lower number, that you kind of got to be in that intermediate to aggressive style of play to try to get the top spot.
And I think it's a good point that maybe the risk level, what you're willing to risk, goes up because it's a pick and pray. Like, you can't, I feel like in a live tournament where you can change picks throughout, you can sort of see where you are and maybe take some points early and get into position. But here, where you're playing the whole contest blind, it's logical to me that your price threshold, you'd want to be looking for more 6 to 1 and up shots. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the pick and pray I like a bit better because there actually is some strategy to it. I feel anyway. You're trying to look like, I'm trying to get to a number. So I'll look at the horses that I like, and am I setting myself up for success or guaranteeing failure, right? If I'm playing all favorites, I'm not going to win, right? So I got to rethink and look at some different options. Now, like a live all mandatory, I basically pick and pray it until I have to change my strategy, right? So I don't want to change my opinions. I'll let that go along. If I'm really starting to fall below the threshold of where I think is necessary to get the win, you've got to change that strategy. You got to look at more of your higher price horses and start to take more shots. Then it becomes ultimately a numbers game. Personally, not my favorite tournaments, right? Because you can have the best handicapping day and then one long shot can come get you. But again, it's part of strategy. I think it's the fun part of contests, of just understanding what the contest is, what are the rules, what the rules are, and playing accordingly. So I think that's the fun part of these different types of tournaments.
They're all games with numbers, as Dave Goodfreund likes to say, one of my favorite quotes about tournaments. And you just have to adjust how you're going to approach it based on all the things you've been talking about in terms of who gets the prize, what's the prize structure, how many races, et cetera, et cetera. Matt will be following along, obviously, throughout the show here, and we'll have you on back very soon to do some more handicapping. And I'm sorry that wow horse beat you out of the pick 6 the other day. I didn't mean to crow about that. I didn't realize that had been a bad result for you.
I'm glad somebody had that, but hey, just I think I've lost close to 200 grand on less than a length of a horse in the year alone. So listen, it comes and it goes. The couple weeks prior, hit it for 20-something thousand, and the next week you lose a heartbreaker. But that's the way the pick 6 is. So I'm glad somebody had it. I'm glad you guys had it.
What's the old line? The life we've chosen. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Matt Vagvolgi, we'll talk to you soon.
Great, Pete.
Next up on the show, we have our guest who apparently is coming to us from some type of boiler room. We're going to get all the details on that. Welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Trey Crump, what's happening?
What's up, Pete? Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I refer to this as my Baltimore bunker.
You've answered one of my first questions already, coming to us from the Baltimore area. Tell us how old you are and what you do for a living.
I'm 26. I'm an engineer. I work in Maryland, live in Baltimore. Originally grew up outside of Philadelphia, though. So I guess my home track would be Delaware Park.
Okay.
Went there a lot growing up. Although I learned to bet at Ocean Downs, which is a harness track in Berlin, Maryland, near I go to the beach down there. So
that's really interesting. So that was like a super old school thing, talking to some of the horse players I talked to, long ago, about how they got into the game. And a lot of people did use harness as an on-ramp to thoroughbred betting. And there's certain things from handicapping harness races that a lot of those players took with them to thoroughbreds. Is that the case with you as well? Or was it more just in terms of exposure? Or did you really learn to handicap the trotters and you use some of the same ideas?
It was definitely more of an exposure thing for me. Like when I've been betting on horses since I was like 3 years old. That doesn't make me any good at it, but when I was learning to read, my grandpa, his contribution to my education was he taught me how to read the racing form. And that was at Ocean Downs on the front porch of our beach house. So.
That's awesome. That's another story I typically hear from people decades your senior. Do other people your age and in your peer group, do you have folks who are also racing fans, or are you a bit of an anomaly?
I'm working on it. I'm working.
Okay. That's what we like to hear.
I'm trying. I have some friends that are more gambling inclined. They like to bet on sports already, so I'm trying to get them to the track.
I love it. That's the best way to do it. What is your approach to handicapping? Are you software, old school? How do you do it?
I like to do paper and pen when I can. But I use basically whatever PPs I can get my hands on. For the least amount of money. My budget's not the biggest. But yeah, I tend to do speed figures. I look at class drops. And for the big races, I try to it's mostly speed figures, but yeah.
We have people like you.
Recent form as well.
We have people like you exactly in mind, and it's been great to see of the folks we've been interviewing who are playing at this final table to see how many of them are people who can't necessarily plunk down the big money to play in an event like the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. So I'm thrilled to have you making it this far. Thrilled to have some of the youth represented as well. Tell me about your relationship to contests. In general, you said you've been playing for a couple of decades despite your youth. At what point did tournaments come into the fray?
So actually this year, the first contest I played was this one back in I was like the third or fourth one, and I finished fifth my first contest. I was like, oh, this is pretty easy. I learned it wasn't that easy.
That's great
but
stuff.
yeah, and then I started playing. I had been thinking about contests for a little bit through listening to your podcast, and I started after I played the first happy hour one that I played. I started doing some of the cash contests on horsetourneys.com for you can do like $12 or whatever, and play like the local track. So I would do like Delaware, I guess Pimlico, because Laurel wasn't running most of the summer. So I would do contests for those, and it's kind of a way because I like betting every race, especially when I go to the track. And betting, I don't always have an opinion in every race, but if I'm playing a contest, I at least have something I'm rooting for in that race. So.
That's low key. One of the best things about contests is they give you a chance to get action in every race for a fixed cost. And I love that. I love that about them. What else appeals to you about contest play?
I guess it's like the same, especially like these pick and pray contests, you don't necessarily have to think about your bet structure or anything like that. I will say, if I do have a strong opinion, I will my strong opinion or two of the day, I will also have cash on those races. But I like that it's kind of an even playing field. Yeah, you just pick the horse that you think offers the most value in that race.
Let's talk about the Breeders' Cup for a minute. How important has the Breeders' Cup been to your horse racing fandom? Have you been to one in the past?
I've never been to one. I do. I mentioned I live in Baltimore. I go to the Preakness every year. So the Preakness is probably the biggest thing in my fandom. My family's been going there since before I was born. I definitely indulge in some of the fun that the infield has to offer as well. But we have actual seats too, so we make sure we can catch a fair amount of the racing action as well. The Preakness is the big one, but the Breeders' Cup is huge. I knew what it was when I was growing up, but I started getting into it more and following it more closely in college. It's huge. It's like that near year end event that all the best horses come. It's really cool. I would love to go to one.
Well, who knows? That could be happening sooner rather than later, depending on what happens in this game. You mentioned participating in the infield revelry. Sometimes we get after it a little bit on these HorsePlayer Happy Hour shows. Have you been known to have a libation while you're making your picks in HorsePlayer Happy Hour?
A little bit. I wait till my weekend is over. I'll put it on. I mostly listen to I'll have the YouTube feed up, but I mostly just listen to the audio. And then 4:30, 5 o'clock rolls around, I'll crack one open.
There you go. That's probably more sensible than our early pandemic approach, where it was just
at that point in the early pandemic, I was doing all and horses were the only game in town to bet on at that point. So.
Yeah, it was a good opportunity, I think, to try to get a hook in people your age, and it seems like to some degree that's been successful. We wish you Godspeed in your efforts to get other people in your demographic involved in racing. And if there's anything we can do to help, reach out. I mean, I'll give regards to the Brooklyn Bunker. It will be honored to have another place named after it, and we're going to see you on the leaderboard here and see how you make out at this final table.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Pete.
Hey, we snuck this in. We can actually get to the race. I like the 9 Madam Ready in this spot. Matt, who do you have in the contest again?
I have the 7 in here, Touch of Class.
Okay, the 7 Touch of Class, 3-1.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a matter of the reason I'm only saying one of them is because I think the second ticket is dead. I think there's an outside chance if I go runner, we can sneak into the top 2. But this horse has to win.
All right, let's see what happens. We're getting chatting with some folks here at the paddock, which is nice. Let's see what happens here for Matt. For my pick, looks like the favorite broke with alacrity and is assuming a nice position up front. There's a good comment in here I want to read during the race because we got to go right to our last of our 8 interviews after this. But Brett Weiner points out, mythical contests are ROI handicapping contests, live money contests or betting contests, not handicapping contests, going all in on 2 heavy favorites in a daily doubles, not handicapping. It's not in the traditional sense of handicapping a race. I like his point. I mean, it's the Breeders' Cup betting challenge and it's the national handicapping contest. And I do think those 2 skills are rewarded in kind in those 2 events. All right, they're turning in here. We'll bring you in for your thought on that, Matt, if we have a chance. Is that my horse trying to make a run here? But I don't know that anybody's gotten to this favorite, unfortunately.
No, everybody's getting short. Get up for second. Just to give me at least a puncher's chance. Oh, you dirty bird. Going to run over the top for second.
That's gross.
Yeah. Okay. So
all right.
That'll more or less wrap up my day. Yeah, I mean, look, it's good performance from the favorite in here, Spicy Marg, straight to the front for Ward. I mean, again, we talk about Chad winning turf races. What else is new? Wesley Ward in a turf sprint. Right to the top, come and catch me, and nobody does.
When they break like that, they're tough to run down. AJ, let's throw CJ in there and make sure we get all of our interviews done, and then we'll have a few minutes, hopefully, before we wrap things up.
The show, pleased to have on somebody I've communicated with via email, but never gotten a chance to meet in real life, or I guess in this case, virtually. CJ Arrigo, how are you, my friend?
Hey, great, Pete. Thanks to good to get on with you and actually interact.
Yes, in real time.
Other than email.
You've got a couple of things I have to ask you about right away. First of all, I see the jersey hanging over your as I look at you on screen, right shoulder there. What's the story with that?
Yeah, so actually it's Danny Woodhead, who was, I was a big fan of I grew up in Massachusetts, so Pat's fan, but my sister ran the Boston Marathon a number of years back for a charity. They had an event after the auction and was feeling in a pretty charitable mood and won the auction. So
nice.
He's hanging behind me. So it was a good Spalding Hospital up there in Boston Rehab Hospital. So.
Supporting a charity, clearly something you're no stranger to, between that story you just told and the fact that you've been supporting us all year long on HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Of course, all the proceeds are going to the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. Is aftercare a particularly important cause to you?
Yeah, no, certainly. And, I'm thinking actually tomorrow during the happy hour, I'll crack open my bottle of whiskey that I haven't cracked open. The second one, I have both of them.
Nice.
But I figure it's a good timing to open that second bottle.
Love it. Yeah. trfinc.org/players. There's actually a few bottles of that left for folks looking to make a donation. Big week for the TRF. We've got that horse show tomorrow night. I'm excited to host this event in Lexington at Mirror Twin. People will be watching from around the country. trfinc.org to get all the details on that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. The second question I had for you was about your Twitter handle. I'm guessing there's a story about why it's at Charbella's dad.
Yeah. So my dad's CB handle way back in the day when I was growing up.
CB, old school.
Old school was CJ's dad. So when I needed a handle, I thought that would be good. So I have 2 daughters, Charleston and Arabella. And Charbella was kind of the mashup.
I love it. It makes perfect sense. I was wondering if Unique Bello was going to figure into the story somehow.
No, well, we always say that that was one of my daughter's favorite horses, and of course, my daughter Charlie. We always said, her favorite was Sister Charlie.
that's two pretty good horses to have as your.
Which I think I have on my Twitter as the explanation there.
That's great. That's great stuff. Give me your basic stats. How old are you? Where do you live now? And what do you do for a living?
Sure. 48 years old. I think we're about the same age. I mentioned growing up in Massachusetts, in Western Mass. I actually need to trade notes with Mr. Bernier, who I believe is also from Western Mass. I grew up way west in Lenox. Was 15 years in Manhattan and been down in Miami for about 9 now.
Gotcha. Okay, so down in Miami, that's that Florida sunshine coming through.
Yeah, exactly. Beaming through the windows behind me.
And tell me about where it began as far as horses go, and then tournaments specifically.
So yeah, I actually, and I think I've said this in the email. I owe you and JK many drinks. A number of years ago, after moving to Miami, I knew Gulfstream was on the road to the Derby. At the same time, I had 2 very young daughters, and I said, okay, I'm going to figure out this horse racing thing. I made 2 kind of New Year's resolutions. One was to figure out this horse racing thing. The second was I was doing a lot more commuting by car. So I said, I'm going to start listening to podcasts, and found you guys back in the DRF days, and here we are. So it all comes full circle, I think.
That's awesome. So
I guess that was, a lot of years ago. I mean, I think 2016, I want to say 15, okay. 16.
Well,
you had 3 hosts back then at the place with the letters. So I don't know if you can put a better year on it, but
no, that sounds right. 16, we were starting to evolve a little bit. Like JK was just starting to get involved.
That's right.
At the time. And it was a great,
that would have been it.
A very different era in podcast history, but it's great to have somebody who. So it sounds like we helped corrupt you as far as the tournament goes.
Yes.
You heard us yapping about them. You wanted to be a racing fan, and what is it that appeals to you about tournament play and the HorsePlayer Happy Hour specifically?
Well, I think the HorsePlayer Happy Hour, it started in the depths, if you will, of the dark days of the pandemic. I think in May 2020-ish, right? And so it was something to look forward to and have an early drink, which I think a lot of us were in those kind of darker days of things. And the workloads were a little lighter. So that's where it started. I was playing tournaments before. But, I think I'm definitely a bit more of a chalk eating weasel. There's definitely a good amount of chalk in my diet. And I think playing tournaments has been a good help for me to, you got to pick from some long shots, right, to get there. So it's good for me to get in the tournament game and force myself to go outside of where I would normally play. So HorsePlayer Happy Hour has been great for that, and doing, random head-to-heads, weekends, etc. Haven't done a lot of the other tournaments, haven't gone NHC Tour yet. We'll save that for another year, maybe take a run at a Rookie of the Year and do that in a couple of years when I have more time on my hands.
Well, what a story it would be if somebody who started playing in tournaments because of HorsePlayer Happy Hour was able to get the job done here at the final table and win a Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. CJ, you seem like an easy guy to root for. We'll be following along, of course, and I look forward to chatting with you again very soon.
Excellent. Thanks, Pete. Same.
You're muted, PTF.
I was asking if they had popped yet at Belmont. The answer is yes. We've got the 11 home for Christmas on the lead. That's who Matt Bernier needs to punch his ticket to the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Mark Henderson on the 1. Andrew Uretsky on the 4. Is he drawing live, Matt? He's $17 back. Yep, certainly drawing live with Pop the Bubbly. So that's another good one to follow. What price is the 5? Greg Lewis needs $21 and has the 5. Does that give him a puncher's chance?
The 5 is
7 to 1.
6 to 1.
Yeah, he'll be drawing live. It won't be assured. He'll need a price second.
I think there are still many chances in this thing right now.
But the 11, 13 to 1, Matt Bernier, be interesting. How far back is he? Does place do anything for him? It might. So it'll be interesting to see for him where that one goes. The 4 and the 5. Does anybody have this 12 in this spot? The favorite, Trey does, but not drawing live. Too far back in the pack. We'll see if this Home for Christmas can get Matt Vagvolgi singing carols a little bit early as they turn in the lane. And this horse has run, I think. We'll see if something else is coming late. Do you like anybody to come from out of the pack here?
No, but I'm annoyed because I have Home for Christmas and I'm going to come up short. Oh, the one's going to run him down, I think. Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be this is
right
yeah,
on
this
by.
is not going to work out. 1 and 11, and because Mark has the 1, those place points are not going to be enough for Matt Vagvolgi. And so the guy, of course, this is the classic case. You knock a guy right into the winner's circle, right? I said I was low key rooting against the people who dissed me yesterday for the interview. Hello, but it didn't. You know what though? It worked out very well. I should be thanking the 2 who didn't show up because we barely had room to get our 8 interviews in. So I was just being churlish. I apologize. And unless something unexpected happens, it looked like Mark Henderson is going to be our guy. Mark, I don't know if you're watching. If you happen to be watching, come join us live. If not, we will try to run you down at some point and get that interview that we failed to get. Great pick by Matt Vagvolgi. Just finds this favorite too tough, running on through the lane and getting the money here in the 9th race at Belmont.
I feel bad for Matt, but selfishly, when I get into this mode of if I know I can't get all of it, I don't want any of it. So when the 11 goes to the front, I'm selfishly thinking somebody come run this horse down so I don't finish 4th, and those near misses don't come back to bite me. But I feel bad for Matt. I've been in that position before too. I guess the only consolation is you didn't get past at the end. I've been in that unfortunate circumstance where you are the leader with 1 to go and you get snapped at the wire by our friend Arklow, which I'll never forget that. But
famous horse in podcast history, Arklow.
It's a good effort from a number of folks on a day that, let's be honest, was very chalky. I mean, it was a very formful day. Even if you look at the qualifier, the winning score is going to be Scotty McKeever is going to get in because of place pricing, and John O'Reilly might be a hair short. He had the 1, but he was $10.90 out of second. So I mean, it's going to be tight. But I mean, we're talking about winning scores in the mid 50s. That's, in the grand scheme of things, that's a relatively formful day.
Yeah, even for an 8-race contest, right? I mean, the one way to look at that is in terms of you look at your starting bankroll. So in an 8-race contest, you're starting with $32.
$32.
And so you're expecting it in a 10-race contest to be 2.5. Typically.
Yeah, when you don't even have to double up to win, I would say that's more of an anomaly than the norm.
Yeah, very unlucky stuff if you back the 11. That was the price. Horse fired. You have it to do over again. Does he move too soon? We'll look at the pace figures. We'll make some, analysis on that. But it doesn't matter. In the end, that favorite was just too tough. These scores are about to go official. We're going to give away
PTF give sort of the, you want to call it the red board of why that horse, in my opinion, made sense. Paired up Beyer Tops of 67, which was considerably slower than many in the field. But for a lightly raced Clement horse, Rosario Reunited has a little bit of early speed. There was reason to think this one was going to improve. I think 13-1 was an enormous overlay. Horse probably should have been half that. But again, easy to sit back and red board it. But just for anybody who was curious why that horse made some sense, there you go.
There's the case. Michael's comment here is great. We'd love to. We'll pop that one up there if we can, AJ, and then we'll go over these leaderboards. Just he has the right sentiment, and there's a couple things I want to say before we get out of here. But there it is, $39.90 for Mark Henderson. He'll get the $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. Matt Vagvolgi in second with 35. Want to thank all the final table players for earning their spots, for playing along all year. Love this playoff format. The idea of the cut line and the resetting and the rewarding of consistency. I think there's really something to be said for it. I hope it'll ride again in the future. Let's hop over, AJ, to the qualifier and see if Scotty did in fact get himself in there. Yes, he did. 54.70. Congrats to him. John Colonel gets our second seed, 47.60. We'll round out the top 6 because why not? Joseph Rosen, John O'Reilly, another Joseph Rosen, and Guy McDillo. Rick Broth in there, who I saw last weekend at Keeneland, and we'll mention him, and we'll mention George Shute as well. And why not? We'll keep going. Ryan Flanders. As long as it's people who've been on the show, they get a call. Ryan Flanders, a.k.a. Benny South Street Trip No Pros, Scotty McKeever, of course, Equine Edge, which got a nice shout out from CJ. I think it was CJ. No, it was Andrew, but CJ, he had texted me after, I meant to mention Equine Edge and how much I use their product. So claps to them as well. Great stuff. I mean, I thought that note was hit by a couple of the people in the show, Matt. When you think about where and why this started, which was basically you, me, JK, Pete Rotundo, early days of the pandemic, not a lot going on. And, it just started out as a lark. And some of those shows were, like some of the only work I was doing some of those weeks when, we kept the podcast going. But it was a scary time. And we started doing this just as a lark. And to be able to see what it's done, where it's progressed in the year and a half, and to be here at Keeneland amongst a great crowd on a beautiful day. This is the good stuff, my friend, and it's been incredible riding with you the whole time, and all the players out there putting their kind words about what these tournaments have meant to them and appreciating the work that we do. It means everything. And I thank everybody at the end of the shows on the regular for a good reason. We don't get to follow these ridiculous dream jobs that we have without the support of everybody out there. So I just want to make sure we acknowledge that before we get out of here today.
Well, and I think that's an important piece to bring up. Without the players that support the events, none of this is possible. We're not allowed to do these sort of things. We can't cook up these ideas that we think would be horse player friendly, but also benefit the greater good from a horse racing standpoint as far as taking care of the horses. So without folks getting involved and playing, and even with these side-by-side contests that we've had over the past few weeks in the playoffs with the feeders or the qualifiers themselves, I mean, again, today, 141 people turning out for this thing. That's a massive number. That just goes to show that there is an appetite for it. People want to go out there and play. This is on a Thursday, not a Saturday or a Sunday. I mean, I think it just goes to show, it speaks volumes that this is something that some folks have an appetite for. And to your point, from where this all started was effectively a way for all of us to maintain sanity, turning into something that there was enough of a response and we had enough of interaction with folks that we thought this could be something that we could package together as a bit of a year-long event. And I think we did that for our first time through. I think it went very well, and knock on wood, we can do it again next year.
Some lessons learned for sure. Some things I know I personally could do better. We'll get to all that, but the plane got off the ground. Right. It started in the depths of the pandemic, and then that sea change moment, you and I brainstorming, I guess it was this winter. Hey, what fun could we come up with to make a cool idea even better? We'll do that again, and we'll listen to your feedback as well. And we want to hear what you've enjoyed on these broadcasts as well. So feel free to reach out at Looms Boldly, at Bernier_Matt. It's been a great pleasure. And not the least of the pleasure is the money we've raised for aftercare. Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, we've talked about them a lot. They do that key work of accrediting the different aftercare organizations. Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, just the other day, I was at their Blackburn facility, Matt. Sometime you're down here, we got to get you out there. Incredible experience seeing the 50 horses on the farm. Prison system, not something that has the best reputation for always working. This program works. We sat there, stood there for an hour talking to the guys, listening to them talk about how the interactions with the horses have transformed their lives. The best line of all came from one of the guys. He said, we're here to teach these horses, but the horses teach us way more. And just to hear their enthusiasm for the animals themselves and the way the direction of their life turned around by this Second Chances program. Incredibly moving stuff. And we've raised a ton of money. We always encourage folks, and I'll leave you with this. We always encourage folks to vote with their dollar for things that are horse player friendly and supporting good causes. Well, Matt, today we've won in a landslide.
I think all things considered this year, I think it has to be viewed as a success. And as you mentioned, we are open to suggestions about things that can be done differently, what people want more of, because really when push comes to shove, if it means we can get more people involved, make a change. We'll do it. I mean, it's all about getting more interaction and more people playing along. So it's been a pleasure all year, man. I've enjoyed it. And I look forward to, hopefully, I'm going to see you in a couple weeks out at Del Mar.
Breeders' Cup, baby. Can't wait for that. The culmination of all this. We'll follow all of our players with great interest, especially Mark Henderson, who gets it done at the final table. That's going to do it. We'll do our thank yous. Matt Bernier, the number one thank you to you, incredible partner in crime. in all these events, to think that you really want to go back to the beginning. You and I saying in 2014, maybe there should be a horse racing podcast. Not too bad. Not a bad decision to go in that. The best stuff happens when you brainstorm, that's for sure. We'll thank JK. He was on a handful of these, but been very supportive in social media and talking it up to people. Been absolutely great to work with him. Rotundo, we got to give Pete Rotundo. He was there at the beginning, and then he passed the baton off to Haley Amos, who's just been an absolute joy, as has Justin McDonald at the Breeders' Cup, McKay Smith on the horseplayers.com side, keeping all the balls in the air, keeping things rocking and rolling. Thanks to him. Dave Vader has also been very active behind the scenes and extremely helpful in a number of events. So, as far as people to thank, they're critical. Producer Craig has been here a lot. And then here at the end of the season, while producer Craig is in marathon land, producer AJ more than ably picking up and doing all the pre-production on those interviews and helping out all over the network. Got to thank him as well. Most of all, though, we got to thank all of you, the listeners and the viewers, for making these shows so much fun to do. With one last shout out to our charity partners, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. These shows have been a co-production of In the Money Media and the Breeders' Cup. On the In the Money side, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.